Welcome to the 10th act of Subversive Kindnesses. No, it's not. Actually, the 11th or the 8th. But the September one, which considers mistakes. Now, of course, some mistakes are grave and have terrible consequences, and we are seeing too many of those in how governments operate. But that's not our caseload today. We want to think about the informal comedies of errors, the quirky slips, which make life interesting. Let's love the little off-piste moments which lead us in strange and inventive directions. I worked under the extraordinary creative force of Jim Buchan some years ago, and his way of leading the textiles and interiors staff and students at Dundee College was uniquely inspirational. When his wife first bought an iPad, he was hugely irked, as she was swift to give the answer to any question he happened to put. He wanted the chance to muse, to discuss, to meander, to maybe get it wrong before he came to the solution. And that maybe says something about how he, as an artist, worked and how his wife as an accountant worked. But as an accountant's daughter, I shouldn't be too general about that. But still, I can understand that need to wander around arm in arm with a thought. How do we write? Now, partly this will be age-related, I think. Certainly my own poems start and go through many drafts in notebooks, and I'm funny about my notebooks. I think a lot of us are. Equally, I do enjoy that time a bit later on the screen, benefiting from what technology offers so brilliantly. So I'm not a complete Luddite, but there are often slips between drafts. I don't always read my own handwriting properly. It's increasingly awful. And sometimes I recognise the wrong word offers a much more interesting path. Then there's the happy typo, which may be electronic, fumble-fingered at the keyboard or just a misread. And oh, curse and bless you, autocorrect. Maybe it comes sooner too. Earlier this year, I was listening to a well-intentioned but very, very boring talk, which mentioned men who can only act in violence. Except I heard men who can only act in violets, which challenged me very differently. And those bizarre floral notions led to the early stages of a poem which had nothing to do with the speaker's sensible words. No, I'm not sorry at all. Sometimes accents and mistranslations, as well as defective hearing, can be useful. I speak as the one-time student who thanked several hospitable people for the mass rather than for the meal in Italy. I also spent an alarming time presenting long-bladed skewers in a Turkish airport. Well, the gun-toting officer was not saying they're okay for chicken. Quite a crowd was gathering, and I agreed and offered all sorts of grilled possibilities to her repeated words. Yes, marvellous for chicken. Fish? Vegetables? Lamb? Well, I mean, we've just loved the food here. Oh, yes, certainly. Chicken, yeah, it's really good for chicken, until at last I realised the skewers, the shish, were in fact okay for chicken. And the slip in understanding may have made a frustrating time for that policewoman, but it's given me a lot of fun. Recorded mistakes go way back, of course. We think of scribes' annotations and illuminated medieval manuscripts. Consider the X-rayed evidence of Leonardo's Holy Family cartoon. A friend's first lesson in ancient Greek opened rather magnificently when her teacher intoned, "In the beginning was the Word." Not so? It says, "In the beginning was the act." Oh, my. Well, we're not going to go there. Less grievously, another friend, who will keep her cloak of anonymity here, sent a poem out to a fine publisher, and things being as they are, the reply took some time. Much later than the advertised date, she was pleased to see that although her poem hadn't made the final cut for the anthology, it was a very, very near miss. And the kind editor told her how much they had all loved her poem, and especially those final 3 lines with their subtle changes, their flow, which was just so very right for the watery subject. Well, it had been quite a while since she had sent the poem, and she really couldn't quite remember those much appreciated lines, so she clicked on the attachment to find that she had in fact sent a working draft of her poem, complete with 3 different versions of the final line. So, mistakes can be wonderful, can they not? My thanks go here to John McCulloch for sharing how Elizabeth Bishop wrote this, which I just want to read in its fullness. Man moth, newspaper misprint for mammoth. Here, above, cracks in the buildings are filled with battered moonlight. The whole shadow of man is only as big as his hat. It lies at his feet like a circle for a doll to stand on. And he makes an inverted pin, the point magnetized to the moon. He does not see the moon, he observes only her vast properties, feeling the queer light on his hands, neither warm nor cold, of a temperature impossible to record in thermometers. But when the man moth pays his rare, although occasional, visits to the surface, the moon looks rather different to him. He emerges from an opening under the edge of one of the sidewalks and nervously begins to scale the faces of the buildings. He thinks the moon is a small hole at the top of the sky, proving the sky quite useless for protection. He trembles, but must investigate as high as he can climb. Up the facades, his shadow dragging like a photographer's cloth behind him, he climbs fearfully, thinking that this time he will manage to push his small head through that round, clean opening and be forced through as from a tube in black scrolls on the light. Man standing below him has no such illusions. But what the man moth fears most he must do, although he fails, of course, and falls back scared, but quite unhurt. Then he returns to the pale subways of cement he calls his home. He flits, he flutters, and cannot get aboard the silent trains fast enough to suit him. The doors close swiftly. The man moth always seats himself facing the wrong way, and the train starts at once at its full, terrible speed, without a shift in gears or a graduation of any sort. He cannot tell the rate at which he travels backwards. Each night he must be carried through artificial tunnels and dream recurrent dreams. Just as the ties recur beneath his train, these underlie his rushing brain. He does not dare look out the window for the third rail. The unbroken draught of poison runs there beside him. He regards it as a disease he has inherited the susceptibility to. He has to keep his hands in his pockets, as others must wear mufflers. If you catch him, hold up a flashlight to his eye, its all dark pupil, an entire night itself, whose haired horizon tightens as he stares back and closes up the eye. Then from the lids, one tear, his only possession, like the bee's sting, slips. Slyly he pans it, and if you're not paying attention, he'll swallow it. However, if you watch, he'll hand it over, cool as from underground springs, and pure enough to drink. So that was Elizabeth Bishop, The Man Moth, which comes from the Complete Poems 1926 to 1979. And really, if that doesn't convince you that to err is not only human, but it has the potential to be seriously divine, well, I'm out of here. I wish you the joy of a whole comedy of errors and look forward to cooking up something entirely different in October. Thank you for staying with me. Bye.